Most of my video ideas come from Twitter at this point, that's just a fact of life now. This time, a discussion about fighting game locals ended up begging the question, what if there was a fighting game specifically meant to be played at 2 AM after everyone's already played their main games? A sort of pick up and play fighter with a smaller roster and fun mechanics. It's an interesting thought, and a complete break from how fighting games are normally viewed. Modern fighting games are now seen as lacking if their roster count isn't in the 20s upon release, and even something as simple as One Strike had 10 characters for a game where you die in one hit. Them's Fightin' Herds and The Black Heart are the only current fighting games I can think of that launched with rosters in the single digits. But what if you wanted to really scale things back and build a fighting game completely around the idea that it would be the game that people play after the main events? How would you go about it? I started writing this video on the morning of September 8th, and by the end of the day, I had my answer. I was fully expecting to write a lengthy script about character looks, character archetypes, and game mechanics that would best fit this sort of endeavor. Then I got given a beta key for Dojo Masters. Like Murfight, I found this game by Steam recommending it to me. I spent a decade doing traditional martial arts, specifically Taekwondo, so I naturally gravitated toward the game's sleek cover art. But in what might come as a surprise, what really sold me on Dojo Masters was its very retro art style. One of my biggest gaming pipe dreams was to see someone take the classic 1986 arcade game Karate Champ and modernize it. Somehow, I got what I asked for. Dojo Masters is a 2-button fighting game with 5 characters, each representing a different martial art. We've got Karate, Taekwondo, Muay Thai, Boxing, and Kendo. I might have gone with Judo in that final spot, but Kendo is a brilliant choice. It allows the game to have a weapons-based fighter that isn't glaringly out of place. Kendo uses bamboo swords, so this fighter still feels right at home with the rest of the cast, as opposed to a character using real swords and asking a karate fighter to block a steel blade. Yes, that will happen in most fighting games, but not this one. Dojo Masters feels much more grounded in its approach to fighting. There's no jumping, and it lacks long combos unless you get into very specific positions. Dojo Masters really knows what it wants to be, a 1.5 instead of a 10 on the fantasy fighting scale. Having only 2 buttons, the move lists are expectedly short, so much so that they can mostly fit on the side of the pause menu. But that doesn't mean they're lacking in any way. The game's developer, Bye Bye Blue, recently said that they like working with limitations because it fuels their creativity, and you can really see that with their approach to most of the fighters. Not every martial art puts an emphasis on using all 4 limbs. That's most obvious in boxing, but the main Taekwondo organization puts such a premium on kicks in points-based sparring that punches are all but irrelevant even at the Olympic level. This 2-button fighting game works within those limitations to still create fun and free-flowing Taekwondo and boxing characters. If the martial art in question doesn't use one of the 2 buttons for attacks, Dojo Masters uses them in other ways. For boxing and Taekwondo, the non-attacking button is used for movement and special move setups. With Kendo, the kick button activates a stance change into a charge move and is how you get the character's special attack. Before we go over the unique way Dojo Masters implements special moves, I want to note how much I like the way the Kendo character handles charge moves. Usually with charge moves, it's a binary. Either you get the charge move or you don't. But Dojo Masters treats this mechanic like a shot meter in a basketball game, with different results for going too early, too late, or right on the money. No matter what you do, a new move will come out when you hit the attack button. This feels really similar to how Murfight had simple charge inputs for attacks that acted differently from when those moves were fully charged. So what happens when you go right as the charge meters hit full? You get an untechable attack. Untechables are Dojo Masters' version of special moves, and are crucial to securing a win. Dojo Masters isn't your typical fighting game where all you have to do is get your opponent's health bar to 0. In this game, you have to do that and then secure a knockdown to win the match. But that's not as easy as it sounds, because this game has teching, where you can avoid a knockdown state by hitting kick right as you hit the ground, allowing you to avoid a loss even if you have no health left. These untechable attacks will always result in a knockdown, and they're denoted on the move lists by yellow stars. If you're knocked down but still have health remaining, the game resets you and your opponent to the round start position like you'd see in actual martial arts matches. This allows a trapped player to view a knockdown as an escape tool, letting them get back to a better position. Everything I just went over, and the rest of the game's surprising suite of mechanics, is covered in its comprehensive tutorial, which can be found in the Dojo section of the main menu. One thing I'd add to the tutorial is a test match at the end of each section, giving the player a bit more time to ingrain the mechanics they just learned. Only the tutorial and training modes were available in the beta's dojo, but the grayed out modes have me excited for the game's full release. There's a replay viewer, character-specific trials, and a vague bonus section, which I think is just there to allow the developer to add any other modes here in post without committing to anything specific. Each of the game's 5 menu tabs had a bunch of grayed out elements in the beta, meaning the full release of Dojo Masters is going to have a lot to it. The single-player section teases mission, survival, and story modes. The local 2-player section teases a co-op story, team versus mode, and a free-for-all mode on top of 2-player survival. Then with the online section, they somehow keep this up, with online story and team versus modes to go along with your standard ranked ladder, casual matchmaking, and private rooms. I nearly jumped out of my seat when I saw that you could set private rooms to act as a training mode. With how universal online play is for fighting games, and has been for like 15 years, I'm shocked that online training modes aren't a default feature in every fighting game. Like with actual martial arts, most of the time, training on your own in fighting games isn't as helpful as training with someone else. But doing so in set matches isn't the best way to go about it. There is an inherent limitation in trying to train under the constraints of a running timer, and then constantly having to re-challenge your training partner to get into a new match. But the offline training mode is nothing to overlook, because Dojo Masters puts a ton of effort into making it a complete experience that makes it easy for players to learn on their own. To go along with the standard input tracking, the game also offers frame and hitbox data, along with a viewable charge meter for characters with those types of attacks. The game also offers many ways to get the CPU acting in whatever way you want, including record functions and a variety of action settings if you're not into recording it yourself. This includes the option to create only do X if I do Y sorts of scenarios. Like you can set the dummy to only go for their special move after you've dashed in. This makes it incredibly easy to set up specific scenarios to train against. And now we get to the gameplay. It is blisteringly fun, and enhanced by sound effects that make every move feel snappy. The game's offense can be fierce, but the variety of defensive mechanics like parries, techs, and being able to force a reset by eating a knockdown balance things out considerably. The best modern comparison would probably be Samurai Showdown, given how short combos are in Dojo Masters. The longest combo I've managed to pull off in training mode was 5 hits, and it was corner only. Playing the game online for the first time backed up my initial belief that its systems would combine to make the perfect after-party game. My first online games came against the developer themselves, Bye Bye Blue. We ran a pair of impromptu first to 20s, and in our first set where they beat me 20-6, it only took 15 minutes. Take a second to comprehend that. We played 26 matches in 15 minutes. That's the exact kind of constant reset gameplay you'd want from a casual fighting game, where you're never sitting on a loss for too long. Dojo Masters just gets it. I mean, it 100% understands what features fighting games really need to have to be a complete and fun experience. It's unbelievably user-friendly. If they ever end up adding mini-games like board-breaking challenges, I'll declare it one of the best games of all time with absolute seriousness. Everything about it is so well made, and I am incredibly excited to see what comes of its full release. Writing an outro now is kinda difficult because what more could I really say? I'm sold on this game like you wouldn't believe. Writing this script over 4 days, I kept liking Dojo Masters more as I spent more time with it. Dojo Masters is a game you need to play when it finally comes out. Thanks to Bye Bye Blue for giving me an early beta key to check out the game. This was amazing. If you're an indie dev that wants me to take a look at your game, hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to tell the world about your great game. Indie games are such a big part of what makes gaming special, and I plan on making videos on non-fighter indies in the future to show that off on a wider scale. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. In the comments, tell me about your favorite indie games. If I like the look of them, I'll make a video. You can see proof of that with the video on the left, and the playlist on the right contains some of my more popular videos. Thank you for watching!